Good overnight, evening, and welcome on in for another episode of From Day One. Tonight, Art Bell brings you with Johnathan Reed going back to Dark Matter, the SiriusXM form of the show, with just a topic, and I admit that I'm interested in this one: Alien in the Freezer. So, from the American Great Southwest and the 25 time zones, let's begin.
This is Dark Matter with your host, Art Bell. Now, here's Art. Well, welcome to Extra Terrestrial Radio, everybody. I am Art Bell, and it's great to be here tonight. A few adventures since yesterday. Though first I would like to note, in a, of course, non-biblical way, I love my studio. Over the past several days, I've been getting, everything adjusted in the right place, just exactly the way I want it. I've got this gorgeous atomic clock above me. I keep getting emails about that. One day I'll tell you where to get one like that. I found that clock, the clock you see in the studio picture, if you've seen it, in Radio France International. I went in there and was given a guided tour based on the network status ad back in the U.S. They let me in, badges and all, right, up to Radio France International, into the control room, and there was this clock. God, I've got to have it. And, I was beating around trying to figure out where it came from. They had producers rushing in, trying to figure out where the clock came from. Well, they never did. Back to the U.S., and I began searching like crazy, and I finally found this clock. Now, I've got one here, another one in the house. I've got one below. So there you have it. I love these clocks. They're expensive, but man, if you're a time person, there's no other way to go. So yeah, I love my studio. Last night, after the program, I went home, sat down at the computer to browse a little bit, random browsing, took my glasses off to clean them with my shirt. Expensive titanium-framed glasses off, and as they were in my two hands, before I even applied the shirt, two halves of my glasses, chatting with a friend. Oh my God, my glasses are broken. Left a note from my wife this morning, and she went off to the optometrist, as I had asked her to do. And he put in one lens from one set of glasses, and I had another pair of frames. He put another lens in the other side that was completely wrong. So when I got them back, I put them on, and I went, whoa, this isn't going to work. How am I going to read anything on the air? So anyway, it's all straight now. Titanium, my foot. By the way, last night, Dr. Greer, his wife, Emily, she's a sweetheart, and she told me, look, Dr. Greer is really tired. And he's been hopping from continent to continent. Remember, we talked about this at your meeting. Continent to continent, and he really has been. And I said, well, sit him down with a cup of coffee. And I think she's sat him down with a coffee and pot of coffee and maybe some Red Bull. I have no idea, but boy, that guy could go. All right, I've got some news for you. And by the way, when a guest goes like that, there's nothing to be done. Either you interrupt them and you get, it sounds really rude, or you don't. And that's about all you do. And I don't interrupt. I've got good news for you. Oh, Canada. Oh, Canada. Guess what? Was unable, a whole country, mind you, was unable to call our 800 number. 800. Well, no, it isn't. It's 855. I guess it's still technically in the 800s, right? 855 real UFO, or 855-732-5836. Now Canada can call. They've unlocked the entire country of Canada. Thank you very much, SiriusXM. And thank you for other things, too, SiriusXM. Thank you for the sound quality. I've been getting a number of emails saying, oh, my gosh, Art, the sound quality is really superb. And you know why? Because SiriusXM sound quality show. That's right, they upped it. So now you know, but I want to thank them for that. I'm very sensitive to sound, as you know. You know how I feel about cell phones, right? Well, they've upped the whole sound quality. I'm talking about on the satellite. No minor. Big improvements in the wormhole. I could barely read it before, and now Keith has made it. Late. Has a blue background, white letters. I love it. So, a lot of changes down here. I want to remind you that if you have a guest that you think would be ideal for the program, you want to contact Paul Bowman. Paul loves getting emails. Been telling me how much he loves getting emails. So if you have a guest you'd like to book from the show, go to artbell.com and find Paul Bowman's name. He's my producer, and he will take care of you. So there's one other thing. Here in the desert, normally we have really, really clear skies. Absurdly clear skies. But right now, and since this morning, we have had this haze. Oh, it's freaky. You can't see the mountains. Can't find out where the haze is coming from. Normally, if there's a fire, we know about that, and then we get smoke or whatever from California or wherever. No fires. No reason for haze. No statements from the Weather Bureau. I hope it's not Fukushima dust. And this, one last sort of note, and that is discussing everybody wants to welcome me back. And, that's really cool. And I know you're all welcoming me back to radio. But instead of doing it, we're going to adopt from Rush. Rush used dittos. Well, somebody sent me an email, and I don't know how to give credit. Maybe I do. Fred. How about Roswell's, folks? If you want to wish me welcome back to radio and all that stuff, just call up and say Roswell's, all right? That'll do two things. One, it will take care of welcome back, and it's great to hear you again and all that sort of thing. And two, it'll keep Roswell on everybody's mind, as well it should be. Looking very quickly around the world, Beirut. Seems now they've mapped out the trajectory of the rockets that delivered the nerve agent sarin. And the trajectory looks right at the government. So 'twas not, apparently, the rebels gassing themselves, or anything like it. Just what you thought, the government. They're the ones with the rockets. Passengers screamed stop, stop seconds before their bus crashed through a crossing barrier in Canada and then into a commuter train during the morning rush hour in Canada's capital on Wednesday. 6 dead, 34 injured. Egypt, they're letting the ousted President Morsi talk to his family, and he's okay, I guess. In Mexico, they've got storm after storm after storm. And I believe there are as many as 80 dead now there in the hurricanes that have been spinning up off the coast of Mexico. So not good news. All right, in a moment, you're going to take quite a journey. We're going to be talking to Dr. Johnathan Reed. And boy, let me tell you, this guy has a story to tell that's going to curl your hair. So stand by. And what we're going to do tonight is going right back to near the beginning. I'm Art Bell, and this is Dark Matter.
Take a ride from the high desert and the great American Southwest.
This is Dark Matter, and I'm Art Bell. I'm going to sort of stop the phone numbers for now, because we're going to start the show. Internationally known contactee, experiencer, author, and lecturer, Dr. Johnathan Reed, whose stated articles have appeared both on international and domestic television, radio, and internet programs, such as Infinito, I hope it is, channel, the Discovery Channel, MX, Costa Rica, Peru, Dreamland, Televisa, and BBC, speaking in South and Latin America, Europe and Russia. And he's done some touring since the show, huh? Along with speaking many times with, he put renowned radio talk shows on our belt, me, as well as many others in countries all around the world. His story of personal alien contact is truly one of the most widely speculated, one of the most controversial, most debated and compelling cases of our time. Having some of the best evidence ever collected relating to the reality of alien or extraterrestrial intelligent life forms interacting with humankind, called us. His case has also been featured in varied ET articles, television programs, literature, numerous publications around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Johnathan Reed. Great to hear your voice, buddy. I am hearing it right.
Happy Roswell, Mr. Bell.
There you are. Just say Roswell's.
Roswell.
That really does it, Roswell's. How the heck are you, Dr. Reed?
Boy, you got a few days?
I got a few hours.
I'm doing good now, and we'll get into some of those details later, but I'm doing well, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be back on with you.
Well, I know that your story is wildly controversial, but I also know, and the audience should know, I don't know if we'll bring them all on, but we've got like 3 more witnesses to what you're about to tell us, as incredible as it's going to sound to this audience. And we have to remember there's a lot of new folks, Sirius XM people that have never heard the show and certainly never heard you and never heard your story. So we're going to go through the original story because it's so, I guess, out of this world. Is a fair comment.
Well, it definitely warrants some time to consider all the steps that I went through, because I always say, look, if I hadn't have experienced this myself, I wouldn't have believed it either.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, of course, I'll just wait. I want to ask you how the years have been in reaction to the story, but not now. Well, let's do the story so we get it out there.
Okay.
All right, where did it begin? How did it begin?
This all happened back in August 15th, 1996. That was a Tuesday in Seattle, Washington, near Seattle, Washington. I had gone for a hike, a day hike, with my dog, Susie, who was a 7-year-old golden retriever.
Is that a fairly common thing for you to do, to take a hike?
Sure. To get out of the city, which is where I was living at the time, about, a 45 to 50-minute drive to a beautiful, pristine area near Snoqualmie Pass, about 60 miles from east of Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we just got in my Jeep, and my dog and I, as we did so many times, and drove to the mountains and parked where we normally park. And
okay, at this point, you're alone, right?
Pardon?
You're alone, right?
Yeah,
just you and your dog.
Me and my dog.
Okay.
In the afternoon. This was, at that time, it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
And so we just got out, and like I said, it's the Pacific Northwest, Washington State, is a beautiful evergreen area that has lots of trails and old logging trails. And that's essentially what this was. We had been there many times before, casually walking, occasionally seeing some wildlife. Early in the day when we started walking, we saw some deer. And this was common, and you could take your dog off the leash and let her run, and she could just have all
I know, and the
dogs.
Northwest is gorgeous. Doctor, it's just a gorgeous place to live, and when the weather is nice and it's not raining, then, and particularly in August, I mean, August 15th, middle of August, must have been really
October
nice.
15th.
Oh, October.
Yeah.
October. Well, it's getting a little nippy by then.
Well, you can get crisp late in the afternoon, but it's still, we have some late summers. And this happened to be a very warm, late summer day. It was a little bit overcast, but for the most part, very, very nice fall day.
Okay.
So we just continued to walk down this old logging trail, occasionally stopping to chase raccoons or look at some of the wildlife and just casually walking. And about an hour and a half into this walk, my dog, Susie, who took off running, scampering through the woods, which was not uncommon. She would either chase squirrels or raccoons or something. But it was her freedom. It was her time to, escape the leash from the city.
Sure.
And she was a great dog and followed direction well. She would come when I called her, and she would stay next to me when I would say stay. So she was pretty obedient. But this time she ran off, and she was barking, and I didn't think too much of it at first. And then I could hear her barking, the sound of her barking change. It sounded more like she was in a little bit of distress.
Right.
Or maybe had found some kind of animal that was backed up against a tree or something. And again, I didn't panic. I figured, okay, well, she'll, get out of there in a moment. And Susie was a pretty big dog. She was about 80 pounds. So, big golden retriever. So as I continued to walk, and I couldn't see her, but I could hear her, and it sounded like she was probably 150 yards up the trail.
It's not too hard to hear when a dog is in distress, because the bark kind of is a little whine comes with it.
Right, and at this point it started to change almost to a yelp. So I knew something had happened. Something was different. You get to know your dog's, voice. And I just knew something had changed. So at that point, I increased my speed and hurried along, and I still couldn't find her because the underbrush in this area is very dense, and there's a very heavy tree canopy, and I could not see her, but I could hear her, and I was getting closer and closer to where she was. So at that point, I figured, okay, she's probably either treed a raccoon or maybe even a small wildcat, because we have those in the area. And if that were the case,
she'd be in trouble.
She could be very, very seriously in trouble. So I set my backpack down, and I grabbed a branch that was laying on the side of the path that was the size of a long baseball bat, and so I just picked it up, and I figured, okay, I'm going to go and probably untangle her from a skunk or a raccoon or something. And I ran forward, and still listening to her sound of her yelping now. And I couldn't see her, but I knew I was close, and I just ran over this little ridge and kind of jumped down through the underbrush. And all of a sudden I saw her engaged with what looked to me at the time like a small size dimension figure, very dark, almost black. And it was the size of a child. It was mostly the size of a child. But what I was seeing...
My memory is awful. I don't remember this from the first story. You're saying you saw a small
being.
Not fully. When you say dimensional, does that mean not solid as
No,
in...
it was solid. It was solid, but the darkness of the area, and at the moment I saw it, it was shaking. It was vibrating like a paint shaker. So you could not really accurately see the outline, the exact outline.
Now that I remember, shaking like a paint shaker, kind of
vibrating. So that the
very quickly?
Yeah, extremely quickly, so that all I could barely see was the outline. But my dog, it appeared to me at first that my dog had this thing by the arm. And I yelled, "Susie, let go." And then I realized, and this is what everyone needs to try to remember. From the second that I first stepped down to see this scene, it was approximately 10 seconds.
Right. And a lot of times in real life, when something this incredible is happening to you, time kind of slows down.
Oh, exactly. And even describing it doesn't give it justice to how fast it happened. And anyway, what I saw was my dog it looked like my dog with her mouth was attached to the forearm of this thing. And they were both vibrating, and my dog was yelping. But then all of a sudden I saw clearly that it wasn't my dog that had a hold of this. It was the arm of the thing that actually extended. If you can imagine, part of your arm molding itself on the head of my dog.
Oh, Lord. You mean kind of disappearing into the head of your dog.
Grabbing the outside of the head of my dog, and then before my very eyes, I saw my dog being torn apart at the jaw. I mean, her body was ripped from her jaw down to her backbone. There was blood everywhere. And at this moment, this thing stopped and looked at me. It stopped shaking just for a second and looked at me with these big, dark eyes, and then turned back to my dog, and my dog started to literally implode, literally disintegrate into what looked like a hole in her body. I mean, it literally started to just get smaller, like if you can imagine something vacuuming something up from the inside out. Her body started to fall into this dark space, and then all that was left was this white, gray ash that fell to the ground. And at this point, I jumped forward and hit this thing as hard as I could in the head with this bat, trying to kill it. And it screamed, and I screamed too.
You had a bat?
Well, I had picked up this branch.
A branch?
Right, along the way.
I got you, okay. In other words, you were expecting probably to be fighting off some animal.
I was going to, right, exactly, to detangle her from some kind of animal.
Got it.
But instead, there was this thing tearing my dog apart, and all I remember is the insane feeling of, I have to stop this. I have to stop her from dying. I have to, and it was way too late for that.
Oh, I so understand that. I so understand that. How
it's
long
like
have you
had you?
How long? Oh, of course, yes. How long have you had her?
I had her about 6 years.
Oh.
She was about 7. She was an orphan, showed up on my doorstep.
Not everybody listening is an animal person. I am. For me, it's cats. Doesn't matter. Dogs. If you have animals, they're part of your family. That's all. They're like a member
absolutely.
Of your,
They are. In fact, sometimes they're a better part of your family.
even after all this time, I can hear it in your voice. The way you're remembering this is so visual and so detailed that, I don't know, I can just hear it in your voice that this is what you saw. And it's an incredible thing to have seen.
It killed me. When I saw this happen, I mean, it literally tore me apart, too.
Of course.
And, but it even became more insane to me because the second I hit this thing, trying to kill it, I wanted to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
It screamed, I screamed. I think in triumph of trying to stop what I was witnessing, that I almost missed it. I mean, I'm not an athlete. I'm 190 pounds, and but I almost didn't hit it. But as I struck its head, it started to fall down. The branch had breached its skull. It had broken its skull.
So
it fell to the ground.
Definitely solid, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you were able to, and so you smashed it, huh?
Oh, well, and you've seen the pictures, and there's pictures now on
Okay,
Dark
let's stop
Matter.
here. Let's stop here and send people to artbell.com. That's the actual website, artbell.com. And we've got, you want to describe what's up there, where we should look, and what we should be looking at for this part of the story anyway?
Well, I don't have a computer on in front of me, but I'll tell you what I sent you.
Sure.
I sent you 3 different pictures of this creature. We'll call him a creature at the moment. And this was after I had knocked it down and laid it on a thermal blanket that I had in my pack. But you can see its head, you can see its neck. It's very old looking. It has veins and eyelids and a mouth and no ears. It has ear canals. If you expand the one side view, you can actually see the ear canals.
Everybody better go take a look at artbell.com, and he actually has pictures of the creature. I would say this. The second one is my favorite, or is it the first? There's 3. Oh no, the third one is my favorite.
Now let me just say something here because it's important. These pictures were taken prior to digital photography.
Mm-hmm.
In 1996, we were still using film. This is 35 millimeter slide film and negative film.
By the way, Doctor, hold on. I want to bring something up.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's 35 millimeter, and the pictures that you sent tonight, particularly the obelisk, we haven't even come to that yet, but back when you took that photograph, they were better quality than they are now. The obelisk was so clear that people got upset about it. And that was 35 millimeter photography, right?
Yes, 35 millimeter, and a good camera, good Nikon camera.
What happened to the better quality photographs that you originally supplied to us?
Well, when I was told today that I needed to send some additional things, I contacted some of my team, and they sent you what I asked them. As far as original, they're all original. Some are just maybe a little more clear than others.
Yeah, I remember the obelisk picture, which was really, really clear.
Yeah, well,
and it was so clear that people complained about it.
I've got, let me just continue the story and say I took approximately 4 rolls of film. I took everything I had left because, I was laying on the ground. The second I hit this thing, I got sick. I got instantly, violently sick. A crippling sickness that dropped me to the ground, to my knees.
Can you describe nausea, or what do you mean by sick?
So sick, no control of my bowels or my bladder or throwing up to the point of bleeding, gasping for breath, and not having any muscle control in my body at all.
At this point, the creature is itself on the ground next to you?
Laying, as far as I was concerned, dead on the ground within about 2.5 to 3 feet from me. And I was now laying face to face with it.
And you were sick as a dog. How long did that last?
Probably about 2.5 hours. I couldn't get up. I would try to get up. I would fall back down. I'd try to slow down my breathing, and I would be gasping for breath. I felt like something had instantly hit me, had overcome me, had taken over my whole body at the second that the impact of the branch hit his skull. And again, this didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any logical sense. Prior to this, I was feeling just fine. It was just a normal day. But the second...
Something transmitted to you through that.
Yes. And the closest thing that I can relate it to, that other people have since identified to me, is the same feeling that people have said when they had had some kind of radiation poisoning.
Wow.
So this was, and when I say a crippling sickness, I mean unbelievably crippling, to the point where I actually thought I was going to die within the first 5 or 10 minutes.
I believe that. I mean, if you were down for hours, couple hours...
well, I just couldn't get up.
I'm with you. You would think you're dying. Sure, that's common...
I was crawling. The ground, the air felt different.
Mm-hmm.
It felt spongy and thick and hot. Nothing felt normal. Everything felt out of place.
Yes,
none of the things that I recognized as a normal life were now in place. And all I could think was, I've got to survive this. I've got to get away. And I started to crawl away from the body just to get away, to maybe mentally focus on something else.
Quick question. Do you think that the effect that stayed with you for like a couple of hours that you just described to us was from being in continued proximity to that body? I mean, I would do the same thing, try and crawl away from it, but I'm just wondering, do you think that continuing effect was because the body was there, or just from what happened when you cracked that thing in the skull?
I think it was a combination of things, of events. As I tried to crawl away, using what little logic I could find that made any sense, I started to hear a sound in the forest. And it was like a low, ebbing, harmonic tone. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where it was coming from, but in my mind I thought, well, maybe it's another hiker. Maybe somebody's got a radio or a boombox or something, and I'm hearing this sound. And I thought, yes, I need help. I hope, that this is what it is. And so I would kind of crawl a little farther, and I'd kind of prop myself up next to a tree, and then I'd get sick again, and I'd throw up, and I'd, just lose all control of my body.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see anything, but I still could hear the sound. I could almost feel the sound. And it was almost like it was scratching in my ears, almost a tactile feeling. And I went a little farther, and I'd fall down, and then I'd prop myself up against a tree, and I'd get sick again. And finally, I got almost angry, and I got up, and I kind of ran through the brush and actually fell down in this little ravine. And then I realized I was next to something that was unbelievable. It was a big black-shaped, diamond-shaped object that I estimated to be approximately 9.5 feet long by about 2 to 3 feet high and about 3 to 4 feet wide. And it was
All right, we've got a
black.
photograph. Yeah, we've got a picture, folks, of this on the website. Big picture.
And in discussing this, I call it the obelisk because it reminded me of the top of the Washington Monument.
And you said you felt a sound. You felt a sound as well as heard a sound.
I felt this sound, this ebbing, low harmonic sound. So low that, I mean, it was like I could almost feel it in my backbone. Very, very solid tone. And kind of modulating a little bit up and down, just a little bit. Anyway, I got up and I crawled up underneath this black thing. And I realized this thing isn't touching the ground. It's anchored to the air. It's not floating. It's not moving. And
now, there's a term, anchored to the air.
It was anchored to the air.
Or defying gravity, right?
And I pulled myself up, got up, stood on my feet, and then lost my balance, and I fell against it. And as I fell against it, the sound changed just a little bit. It became more pleasant sounding for a moment.
Pleasant sounding.
And this thing was cold, like dry ice. I mean, when I pulled my hand away, because of the cold, it actually tore the skin off the palm of one of my hands. It was like granite, polished marble.
Nothing pleasant about that.
There was no windows, there was no seams, there was no landing gear, there was no antenna, there was just this black thing.
And it was hovering how far above ground?
Approximately 2.5 feet above the ground.
Right.
When I finally got enough.
No, doctor, hold it right there. Hold it right there. We're going to take a break. My guest is Dr. Johnathan Reed. And I guess I don't have to tell you what you're hearing. This is Combat. And I can only imagine, with what I've heard so far, that if it happened to me, I'd be dead. You know, my age, it'd be a heart gone. And just with what has been described so far, I'd be gone. I'm sure I would. Maybe not, but I just don't think I'd make it through that. Johnathan, welcome back.
Thank you, Art.
You don't have a weak heart, I take it.
Actually, I've had 2 heart attacks in the last 10 years.
You do have a weak heart. Okay, but this was 96.
Right. I didn't know any better.
You're lucky it didn't go then.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, here you are. You're trying to crawl away from this thing. You crashed into it. It's making you sick. Really sick.
Well, I wasn't sure what was making me sick, except I knew something in the whole area was causing me to feel sick and me to feel out of anything that I felt natural with. My world was gone. This was a totally unusual, unparalleled feeling of being out of your own element. I thought I was either completely going insane or that I was going to die from this sickness just from the fact that my body was becoming so dehydrated. And I just couldn't control it. And after I fell against this thing for a brief second, just for a minuscule second, I almost felt like I was inside of it and then got thrown out. And
so you felt it?
It felt like it was an intelligent machine.
Okay.
Like it almost was trying to figure out if I was maybe the little guy that I knocked down.
Oh.
Maybe because I was the only two-legged breathing thing crawling around. Maybe it was looking for its partner.
Okay, maybe I'm going to ask you for the impossible, but how do you? I mean, I understand that you felt it. It was in effect in you, and you felt a kind of a machine. But is there any way to put that really into words? What does the machine feel like?
Well, being that it was making this sound, being that it was creating this sound,
This big humming sound.
and when I touched it, that humming changed.
Right.
That gave me the indication that, this was somehow generating this sound. And it was so obscure to see this thing in the middle of the woods, so out of place, but yet hanging 2 feet above the ground, not hovering. And I need to really reference that. It was not moving a fraction of an inch.
Right.
But yet it was there. It was anchored above the ground. I mean,
well, that's what you said, anchored, which is an interesting way to put it. I would have said floating, but you're saying anchored.
Yeah,
so
stationary, 100% stationary.
When you crashed into it, you didn't budge it.
Not a fraction. It made almost no sound as far as me trying to put my hands on it or leaning against it. It almost felt like it was kind of absorbing the sound. Now, this could have been all an illusion because of my sickness as far as the overall sound.
Mm-hmm.
But I carried on to say to myself, well, I guess it's here. I guess this is in front of me because it's tangible. It ripped the skin off of my hand. I know that didn't just happen with a tree branch. And I can't move this thing. And it's making a sound. And for a brief second, I felt almost like it was trying to identify something.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe I wasn't it. But this is speculation after years and years of thinking about this. I mean, at the time, I had no idea. I was just going completely out of my mind, trying to find some logic to hold on to, because nothing made any sense. And I knew that my body alone was quickly becoming in severe state of shock. And I was conscious of that. I was conscious of the fact that I couldn't breathe. I was gasping for air. And when you do this for a long period of time, you almost lose consciousness and then come back because of the whole air process of your body. So I was readily aware that my body was going into shock. So my mind was survival. My mind at that moment was survive this.
Mm-hmm.
So at that moment I said, okay, I got to get some water. I have to get some water in me because I had emptied all of the water in my body that I had between throwing up and losing control of all of my functions.
So you were in shock. You were severely dehydrated.
And I was aware I needed to get some water, and I had some water in my pack. I always take things with me when I go on a day hike. When you've done it for years and years, you realize there's certain things you take with you.
Mm-hmm.
I had some dog treats. I had a thermal blanket. I had a first aid kit. Some of the just bare essentials. I had a water canteen. I had a couple of cans of soda. And I knew I had water in my pack. And to me, to focus on this at that point gave me great solace, gave me great restored some idea that I was thinking a little bit clearly. So I focused on that, and I actually crawled back up, which was probably 200 feet to where my pack was, where I had left the pack.
Right.
And I grabbed it, and I sat there, and I drank the water, and I drank some of the soda, and I realized I've got my camera with me in the pack.
Now,
And
that's some pretty clear thinking after you've described the condition you were in.
well, I had to take the camera out to get to the water.
Right.
It wasn't clear thinking. It was just the process of elimination. And at that moment, Art, in my head was, none of this is real. I was actually thinking to myself, this has to be all an illusion. I have, somehow, hurt myself or fell down or had some kind of massive stroke, and I am now living in this illusion. That's what my mind was telling me, because none of it felt real. So when I saw my camera, I thought, well, I'm going to take a picture of this, and none of it will come out. And then it'll prove to me that this nightmare is not going on. That was my thinking. My thinking was, I've got this in my hand. I know how to use a camera. I was a pretty good amateur photographer. Photography was kind of my hobby.
Sure.
So I thought, well, I'll just prove to myself that this isn't here. So I grabbed my cameras. I walked back over to where this was. I took some pictures of the body crawling around on my hands and knees. I crawled back over to where this black floating shape was. I tried to clear some of the brush underneath it away.
Right.
So that it was even clearer that it wasn't touching the ground. And as I did that, as I tried to clear some of the ferns away underneath it, there was a feeling as I moved this stick, this branch to pull away the ferns, like there was a density of the air underneath this thing that was different than the air around it. Almost like if you put a branch or a board in water.
Yes.
When it enters the water, it has a resistance that's different than the air. And this was the same thing, except it was just the air underneath this object that was more dense. And again, I couldn't explain it. I didn't even want to rationalize. All I'm doing is seeing it in front of me. And I'm focusing on, okay, take the picture. Don't think of anything else. Just work your camera. You know how to work the camera. It was pretty much automatic anyway. And I concentrated on that. I totally focused on, almost obsessively, on take the pictures, Johnathan.
Sure.
And because it gave me, again, some kind of promise of logic, because I knew how to take the picture, I knew how to take the film out of the camera and reload it, and I just kept saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take this, I'm doing this now, I'm taking the picture. And I did. And I also had a video camera with me. And I videotaped this whole area under the state and condition.
You had recovered you had really recovered a lot to be doing that.
Actually not, Art. If you hear the videotape, I am so hyperventilating and so stopping and so throwing up during the videotape that it's clear that I was not recovered. Art, I am just a man, and I was running on pure adrenaline and only holding on to that logic that kept me moving forward, because I didn't want to think about what had happened with my dog, what had happened with this creature, what had happened to me. I didn't want to think about it. I wanted to just be healthy. I wanted to just come out of this nightmare at the moment. So that was the only logic going on. Now, Art, you've had some of those photographs from years ago.
Oh,
You
yes.
even had the negatives.
Oh, yes. Listen, folks, these photographs are so clear. I wish the ones that we had up on the website for you right now were as clear as the original photographs. They were so clear that people raised hell about it. Usually it's, it's a fuzzy photograph of a UFO. This was so clear that people complained. And Dr. Reed is right. I have the negatives to these photographs. Story over.
And we also had other people, independently look at the negatives and look at the videotape. And it is exactly what it is. It's just normal negatives, normal positive prints.
Was there any reaction to either by the object or the creature to the photographs being taken?
Well, as far as I was concerned, the creature was dead. I mean, his skull was broke open. There was a 2-inch hole in the back of his skull. It had cracked the intracranial sac. The blood was everywhere from it, and
was it red blood like ours?
Yes, exactly like ours.
Is it your impression that the obelisk was a vehicle, or was it a companion, or what was it?
Well, I've never felt it was a craft. Many people have said it was a craft.
Mm-hmm.
I have felt that it was something else, but it was, in my mind, it was alive. It was readily sensing the area and or causing my body to be in such distress. Maybe it was a defense mechanism, I don't know. But it could have been a portal to another dimension. It could have been a doorway or a toolbox.
Okay. From its size, you wouldn't think it would be the craft, but as you point out, it could be still a means of travel from wherever to here.
Yes. And since then, I've talked to lots of people all over the world who have also seen the same shape, the same dimension, the same object, many, many, many different places and over the last 100 years.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In other words, after you originally told this story on my program, you did a lot of what, touring?
Well, I once you allowed me to tell my story, and you were the exclusive first point of me going public. A lot of people inquired. A lot of people wanted to listen, to understand what I'd gone through, and I felt at the time that I guess this is what I need to do, is I need to tell people. I need to share this with people.
No, I don't blame them. Anybody, for example, even right now, and it's almost as though you're remembering more than you did then. Anybody listening right now is going to be aware that this is a serious story of contact. So yes, I'm not surprised that.
Well, it's serious, but what I want to add in is I've since learned, Art, that there's thousands of people who have very similar stories.
I know, but they don't have very similar evidence.
That's right. They either were smart enough not to bring it forward, or they just didn't have it. Look, I'm not. I was not experienced into this. I was never a believer or even a prescribed interest into this field. I didn't even like science fiction. I was a serious scientist, a doctor that works with logic. So this was totally out of my element, not even of my interest at the time. So my whole paradigm began to collapse because I could not find any logic.
You realize, and I'm sure you've met with this, that these kinds of stories, doctors, scare people, and when people get scared, they get defensive, and they start screaming hoax and all the rest of it, because it scares them. It really scares them. And
like I said at the beginning, Art, if this hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't believe it either, except for the fact that there's a lot of physical evidence. And if there wasn't physical evidence, including photographs, including video, and including some other things, then I definitely can see how people would be, hard to see it as being anything other than just a story.
Sure. All right, well, let's pick up, because there's so much more to it. Now
And actually, let's not say we did, because that's going to be a huge block, and we are running deadly out of time. So we will conclude our broadcast day there. Please make sure, as always, please like, share, and subscribe. Like one another, and release the Krakens, as we'll be back for tomorrow night's part 2 of this talk of Alien in the Freezer, as we march along here from day 1. Have a great night and enjoy your night's sleep. We'll see you tomorrow.